human experimentation and research ethics evolved over time. On occasion, the subjects of human experimentation have been prisoners, slaves, or even family members. In some notable cases, doctors have performed experiments on themselves when they have been unwilling to risk the lives of others. This is known as self-experimentation. This is a list of 5 evil and unethical experiments carried out on humans. 5. Stanford Prison Experiment. The Stanford Prison Experiment was a psychological study of human responses to captivity and its behavioral effects on both authorities and inmates in prison. The experiment was conducted in 1971 by a team of researchers led by psychologist Philip Zimbardo at Stanford University. Undergraduate volunteers played the roles of both guards and prisoners living in a mock prison in the basement of the Stanford Psychology Building. Prisoners and guards rapidly adapted to their roles, stepping beyond the boundaries of what had been predicted and leading to dangerous and psychologically damaging situations. A third of the guards were judged to have exhibited genuine sadistic tendencies, while many prisoners were emotionally traumatized and had to be removed from the experiment early. Finally, Zimbardo, alarmed at the increasingly abusive antisocial behavior from his subjects, terminated the entire experiment early. 4. The Monster Study. The Monster Study was a stuttering experiment on 22 orphan children in Davenport, Iowa in 1939. Conducted by Wendell Johnson at the University of Iowa, Johnson chose one of his graduate students, Mary Tudor, to conduct the experiment, and he supervised her research. After placing the children in control and experimental groups, Tudor gave positive speech therapy to half of the children, praising the fluency of their speech, and negative speech therapy to the other half, belittling the children for every speech imperfection and telling them they were stutterers. Many of the normal-speaking orphan children who received negative therapy in the experiment suffered negative psychological effects, and some retained speech problems during the course of their life. Dubbed the Monster Study by some of Johnson's peers who were horrified that he would experiment on orphan children to prove a theory, the experiment was kept hidden for fear Johnson's reputation would be tarnished in the wake of human experiments conducted by the Nazis during the Second World War. The University of Iowa publicly apologized for the Monster Study in 2001. 3. Project 4.1. Project 4.1 was the designation for a medical study conducted by the United States of those residents of the Marshall Islands exposed to radioactive fallout from 1954. For the first decade after the test, the effects were ambiguous and statistically difficult to correlate to radiation exposure. Miscarriages and stillbirths among exposed Ron Gallup women doubled in the first 5 years after the accident, but then returned to normal. Some developmental difficulties and impaired growth appeared in children, but in no clear-cut pattern. In the decades that followed, though, the effects were undeniable. Children began to suffer disproportionately from thyroid cancer, due to exposure to radioiodines, and almost a third of those exposed developed neoplasms by 1974. 2. Project MKUltra. Project MKUltra was the code name for a CIA mind control research program run by the Office of Scientific Intelligence that began in the early 1950s and continued at least through the late 1960s. There's much published evidence that the project involved the surreptitious use of many types of drugs, as well as other methodologies, to manipulate individual mental states and to alter brain function. Experiments included administering LSD to CIA employees, military personnel, doctors, other government agents, prostitutes, mentally ill patients, and members of the general public in order to study their reactions. Efforts to recruit subjects were often illegal, even discounting the fact that drugs were being administered, though actual use of LSD, for example, was legal in the United States until October 6, 1966. In Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA set up several brothels to obtain a selection of men who would be too embarrassed to talk about the events. The men were dosed with LSD, and the brothels were equipped with one-way mirrors, and the sessions were filmed for later viewing and study. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all MKUltra files destroyed. Pursuant to this order, most CIA documents regarding the project were destroyed, making a full investigation of MKUltra virtually impossible. 1. The Aversion Project. South Africa's apartheid army forced white lesbian and gay soldiers to undergo exchange operations in the 1970s and the 1980s, and submitted many to chemical castration, electric shock, and other unethical medical experiments. Although the exact number is not known, former apartheid army surgeons estimate that as many as 900 forced sexual reassignment operations may have been performed between 1971 and 1989 at military hospitals, as part of a top-secret program to root out homosexuality from the service. Army psychiatrists aided by chaplains aggressively ferreted out suspected homosexuals from the armed forces, sending them discreetly to military psychiatric units, chiefly Ward 22 of one military hospital at Voortrekker, near Pretoria. Those who could not be cured with drugs, aversion shock therapy, hormone treatment, and other radical psychiatric means were chemically castrated or given sex change operations. Although several cases of lesbian soldiers abused have been documented so far, most of the victims appear to have been young, 16 to 24-year-old white males drafted into the apartheid army. Dr. Aubrey Levin, the head of the study, is now clinical professor in the Department of Psychiatry, Forensic Division, at the University of Calgary's Medical School. He is also in private practice, as a member in good standing of the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta. Well, see you guys in our next video. Thanks for watching and subscribe.